All right, so to unpack this further, we now bring in Economist and Senior Manager at PWC Strategy, Xhanti Payi. Xhanti, a very good afternoon to you. So just weigh in on, what the implications could possibly be following those threatening statements made by President Trump. I mean, the South African Chamber of Commerce also in the United States has expressed deep concern over the possible impact on South African businesses after Trump threatened to cut U.S. funding to the country. Your comments on this?
Look, it's a very interesting space that we're in the sense that, of course, when we talk about U.S. funding, we know that there's specific funding that they've given us, and many people have really reflected over the issue of PEPFAR. And it's a serious one, right? Because obviously but there's also been negotiation around maybe they'll keep it. But in the long term, we will have to find a plan because this is not something that can be held over any country. I think by our calculations, that's probably something to the tune of 9 billion to support our HIV program outside, of course, the medication that we buy. So that's no small amount of money. Then we think about the other funding. I don't know if he means the same thing when he says cut funding, because of course we also receive a lot of investment from the United States. The US is not the biggest investor into South Africa. Of course, we have much of Europe, especially the UK. And then also part of the reason the US invests or supports South Africa in terms of aid it's not only in the goodness of its heart, but it is really to build a strong relationship with us and to make sure that we are allies. And that is also no small matter, because allies are important, because in the environment in which we live, one of the things that we have all to be aligned to is that friends are more important than enemies. And I suspect that somebody's going to have to, to bring President Trump to the understanding and the alignment that this is not a one-way street. So it's not a charity thing, as he may think, but actually it is about, and many countries will call it friendship. But when you call it friendship, this is actually relationships. This is about actually how we even negotiate trade, how we negotiate the way countries work together, both on a diplomatic system, but also in a business system, so that actually, if you come here as an American businessman, you find a much softer place, you might find a much more friendlier place, because America holds in the hearts of South Africans a special place because of what the Americans have been able to do to support our programs. So I think, and many people will tell you, it's not a very responsible move.
And I mean, of course, you touched on, broadly what this relationship actually entails. I want to then draw your attention to just the specifics in as far as the, implications are concerned. I mean, earlier on, we were speaking to the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, again, saying that the U.S. remains a key strategic, political and trade partner for South Africa. Also saying that, South Africa doesn't receive a lot of funding outside of, and you've also mentioned it now, the PEPFAR aid, which amounts to about 17% of South Africa's HIV/AIDS program. But when you consider issues like, for instance, AGOA going up for renewal in September, and given the views that have been expressed in the past, what is your take on that? Can we really, as South Africa, be, comfortable that this particular matter will be solved and this AGOA question is not a problem?
Well, I'd like to say it would be nice to say that calm heads will prevail, but we know that that's not the environment we're in. But if we think about all of these things, let's take AGOA, for example. Now, AGOA is not an aid instrument. It's actually an international relations instrument. It's one that was negotiated by the State Department, and in it carries markers, or what should we say, indicators of who gets to benefit and who doesn't get to benefit. So, for example, it will say you must have a democratic system, you must share certain values of the US, you must, abide by human rights and all of those things. So it was one that actually was used to actually bring those who are beneficiaries closer to the U.S. and the U.S. way of life and U.S. intentions and values and perhaps even interests. So to take it away, it really means that the U.S. is no longer interested then in advancing in its interests, advancing its values globally, and as many Americans will tell you, about global leadership. So in one sense, that would be a strange thing for them to do because they would have been losing something quite important in terms of which even America's character and America speak about themselves. But maybe the important thing, and you mentioned this word strategic. Now one thinks, what is the strategy behind all of this? Because you must say, if it's a strategic relationship, you actually are implying that there's a strategy, there's a pathway to an end. And it doesn't seem very clear that the strategy that is now being employed is there. It's not very, very clear. Perhaps they will articulate the strategy because one has to say so. So in economic terms, for example, there's very strategic relationships. When we say it's a strategic relationship with South Africa, one of the things we are saying is if we are close to South Africa is a very big and influential country on the continent, especially economically, but also very politically influential, so that, South Africa, for example, hosts, amongst other things, the African Parliament. South Africa's voice is very strong. South Africa pays a lot of money in terms of supporting the continent for peace, for elections, and for many other things. So South Africa's infrastructure has been very useful, including actually, financial infrastructure to the rest of the continent. So if you cut, and obviously even our ports, so if you cut a relationship with South Africa, I wonder if you think of yourself as being strategic. So these are strategic relationships economically and politically. And so by that, if I just kept that word that you said about strategic relationships, and obviously I work for a company, PWC is a strategy firm, and I doubt very much that if I think strategically that I see the strategy here or a strategic outcome at least. So look, but it is still early days. Some of these, many people have said President Trump, when he does these things, he does them for a particular outcome or he's driven by certain interests. But in my personal opinion, it would not be very strategic to deal with South Africa in the manner, including the very patronizing manner that they have. But we'll have to see as time goes.
And it is unfortunate that those unstrategic decisions do have adverse effects, including the rand that took a knock following those statements. But thank you so much, Xhanti, for your time. Really do appreciate it. Xhanti Payi is with PWC Strategy, a Senior Manager and Economist there.